Well, there's been saying he wasn't getting me.
You got this one.
Okay.
In attendance. I've got a distribution list and he's not on it, so I always have to add him in addition, and that's pretty good.
It's echoing too.
Yeah. We're going on YouTube. Okay, we are.
Hey, neighbor.
We're live.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Call the meeting to order at 6:06. Thanks, everybody, for coming to our Housing Alliance meeting. And circulated the minutes from July 26, 2023. And so would somebody please make a motion
So moved.
to
Second.
approve them? Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Leroy. Any discussion? No, all in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Great. Eric, you eyeing as well? Great. That's unanimous. Terrific. Next on the agenda is a discussion about the Affordable Housing Purchase Program FAQ. Tom, you want to start that discussion while I look for a copy of this?
Yes, I do. I think I circulated it with the agendas for those present. I do have copies here, and I think Brian is probably going to share a
I
screen
will share a screen, yeah.
and show it up for all of us to see. This was produced really as a result of a second property going for resale. And Brian had the great idea and actually took the initiative to prepare this. Our intent here would be, it really is to create a document, I'll call it kind of organic. We can build on this. This was just kind of the first very quick cut under some pressure.
Yeah.
To provide to prospective buyers, to brokers and agents that are unfamiliar in large part to all of this. And again, we'd like to kind of build this out. So it's here for discussion, one, for awareness, but two, if you can think of ideas for additional questions that might be helpful to help explain the program, we can certainly build this out as we go forward. I guess this is also something we can have as a static document on the website for folks that are just casually interested as well. So it can serve multiple purposes. And then at some point we'd like to perhaps give you an update on that resale that we just went through. Just a quick little hit the highlights. In that regard, Brian also had a really good idea that these properties get marketed through conventional systems, through the MLS system. And thankfully the listing broker took our advice and I think properly disclosed the fact that there's something different about this property. There's an agreement that needs to be respected and so on and so forth. But Brian had the idea that we might develop some additional language that we would give to listing brokers to add in the, I think it's called internal remarks.
That's right, yeah.
Again, for other agents but also for prospective buyers, again, alerting them to the fact that there's something unique about this property.
Yeah. Thought being if there's something consistent that gets put into these remarks that we're comfortable with, the verbiage on, that could be a good service. I think it's one thing to say this home is subject to the affordable housing purchase program, and that probably means nothing to nobody or nothing to anybody.
What's the consequence of that?
Right? And it's another thing to describe it in a little bit more detail that we could be prescriptive about.
And I totally agree with that, being, working with this every day and with people every day who don't always understand what they're reading. That the more explicit we could be, but keep it simple, the better. Because internal remarks are meant to be a place where you explain something that's out of the ordinary. So as well as other things, but that definitely. And then I would also recommend that when we're dealing with brokers who are dealing with working with these houses, that we assist them in the in verbiage, even for their marketing materials.
Yeah, in both cases, the listing brokers did come forward and really sought to understand. So we've had pretty good success so far.
Yeah. Tom, I'll add, one question that came up with this sale that, that I'd like to suggest adding to this list, and we'll probably push it to 2 pages, so hopefully we can get some more questions to fill out that second page. Is where, how will somebody demonstrate their income? And there was a question about,
Yeah.
what line on the tax return gets used? Is it, is it the modified adjusted gross income? Is it the gross income? Is it the W-2 income? And, that's a useful thing for brokers to be able to explain to prospectives. And so, for the next version of this, that's one more data point that I think would be nice
And to lenders, because remember, these folks are going to be working with lenders. They're going to be, under special programs, probably like Misha or VA or whatever.
Yeah,
Emery, did you see this property come up on the MLS?
I wasn't paying attention.
What?
Contrary to popular opinion out there, I don't sell in Scarborough very often.
Fair
I
enough.
thought you were gonna say something about paying attention, Jim.
No, no. I very rarely sell in Scarborough. There's just some people who think that I'm trying to list houses in Scarborough, I guess. I don't know, all the time. Don't know. Don't go there.
Yeah, so we've got a member of our alliance who is also a real estate agent. I've asked her to put some
Yep.
thought into, what some language would be. And so maybe we can take that up at a future meeting, or in between meetings and come back to folks with some thoughts. So that is the second item on the agenda.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
Definitely.
Every time we have a sale, we'll end up having some question that arises that we can clarify,
Yeah,
put in
Sure.
here.
Right.
yeah,
By reducing the size of the font, we can keep it to 1 page.
that's the spirit, Bill. That's the spirit.
Can you read it if you reduce?
Yeah, we'll be able to read it.
Maybe we can eliminate vowels from. That'll save something, all vowels. So, yeah, great.
Do you want to, just while we're talking about, do you want to just give a quick update on how this transaction seems to be falling together?
Yeah, you wanna talk about that with,
Yeah,
not
you-
giving too many details, but.
Yeah, you might recall, I think came to us the day of the last meeting or the day before the last meeting, so we
It was
know.
the day of, yeah,
Day of.
Yeah.
One of the unique things about this is it's actually in an estate situation. The
Yeah.
first owner of the property, the condo, passed away. And so we were dealing with his personal representative. And she was able to provide, all the requisite documents to demonstrate recognition of that status through the probate court. So we're satisfied in that regard. It did present a couple of questions with regard to our agreement in terms of whether or not this person could continue to live at that property given the status. But they are, we believe, not only PR to the estate, but also the sole beneficiary of the estate, which is kind of, adds just another layer of intrigue perhaps to this. But long story short, it does appear that this person is residing there on a very short-term basis as they have another house under construction. And within days of this going on the market, it was able to get under contract just today officially with me approving the purchase and sale agreement. But long story short, it appears as though the buyer is absolutely qualified, and given the income, and they did provide their IRS returns, so we're able to verify that sufficiently, is in my view certainly the sort of person that we want to be helping. I guess we can.
I think that's probably a good description. I mean, we had a very engaged agent working with us, who asked us questions and was communicative.
Let's say that this person, the buyer's income is about half of what it could be, the maximum.
Yeah, so we've got a very qualified buyer,
Very qualified.
and so I think it'll be a successful transaction, and look forward to.
Yeah, so just in keeping with the agreement, the personal representative indicated, provided the notice of intent to sell, which we acknowledged. We advised income limits and also with respect to that maximum allowable price, essentially sale price. And it went on the market. They came back to us with a purchase and sale agreement for our review. And so we looked at that, looked at IRS statements for income verification. Had a letter from the lender, so we had a sense of what the mortgage terms were.
Mhm.
And all of that gave us all the information we needed, frankly, that in the listing to make a determination today that essentially we approved DNS. So
And, you know, nice was that from the last sale, there was an approval letter that was already drafted, that we're able to use, you know, as precedent for this one, for consistency. And, I think it made it a little easier to administer the process this time.
yeah, I did. And yeah, I think, I don't know, this one seems to go a lot easier than the first one.
Yeah,
I think it had a lot to do with the buyer, frankly.
maybe, yeah. What I remember about the first one was sort of having multiple offers to discuss and think about, and this one was very much, here's an offer, we plan on accepting it, and does it work?
And it may have something to do with the seller and the seller's circumstances, unlike, you know, they inherited this. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, they're interested in maximum sale price, but probably not interested in speculating,
Yeah.
going, you know, waiting and getting a multiple offer situation.
Yeah.
Took a good number and went with it as
Yeah.
opposed to, you know, trying to drive the price as
Yeah.
high as, you know.
But, you know, one of the bits of feedback was, that there was a lot of interest. I think there's an open house for this property. And so the program's working. It's, you know, attracting interested people and.
Yeah.
And that's good.
And of course, this new buyer will look to have the buyer enter into the same agreement. We're still in review period, so we don't have a kind of an updated version, so we're gonna have to go with the current version, which is not the end of the world by any stretch. And Brian, one piece I wanted to circle back on for my own education and perhaps that of the committee. These are protected by this agreement and deed restriction for a period of 30 years. And that doesn't ever start anew with every new buyer.
Yeah, I think, so the way it's written now, it's 30 years from the day that it was first written. I think if we were to move to a version 2 of one of these, there's probably an opportunity for us to think about.
Is that
reading
clear in the document? When that start date, or more importantly, when the end date is?
I think so. But I think it's worth looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's a discussion point we may, I'd like some input from the committee on whether or not with every sale and every new buyer, they're subject to a 30-year restriction. In effect, perpetual.
Yeah.
The problem would be perpetual if we take that approach. To do so, we need to redraft
Yeah.
certain portions of that agreement. So we don't need to finalize that tonight, but that's something that I think deserves a little attention.
Can't even imagine buying something with interest rates right now.
oh, I know, right?
Payments have gotten insane.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a different time for sure. I remember we were thinking at one point of rates in the 3s and 4s. And
Yeah,
now
we're
they've
well
got-
past that
they've got
now.
the 2s. Yeah,
Well, we're at rates that are historically what they've been for the last 30, 40 years. That we're at the historical average, believe it or not. When I bought my first house in 1982, the rate was 18%. So there you go.
But the problem, of course, is that the current owners
Right.
bought it at 2, 3, or 4, and now
Right.
the
Now it's
buying
up.
power of the buyers today is diminished that
Yeah.
much more.
Right. But the intent of this program is to help someone get into a house. It's not necessarily to build equity. It's nice if they can, but that's not really the point of it. The point is to have a roof over your head, and to enjoy it. And, you know, if you can walk away with some equity, that's great. But, you know, they know up front, if they read the docs and they've got, you know, people who know what they're talking about helping them, they understand that, you know, there's a risk with these too. But that's, you know, this, but I'm so happy to hear we got someone. I think that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it's really great.
I'm thrilled.
Great. So next on the agenda, the project across the street is almost done. Village Commons.
Yeah.
And the good folks at Avesta have invited us for a tour. If we're
Cool.
interested,
Oh, that's terrific.
I think that'd be great, right?
I think it's fantastic.
I think we can probably organize one for Jocelyn Place, the one that South Portland is doing, Housing Authority behind Town of
Absolutely.
Pembroke. They're on a similar path.
Absolutely.
So folks interested in
We need to see it.
seeing what our good work is turning into?
Sure.
They made themselves available in the evening for your convenience too.
Mhm.
I mean, the easiest thing would be is our next scheduled meeting is to perhaps meet there.
Yeah,
When's that?
It'll be roughly a month from now.
Month from now.
I'll check with Nate to make sure that they're not actually gonna have occupants.
Yeah, so that would be October 25th.
Yeah.
Maybe if we popped over there an hour, a half hour early.
Here's Eric. He could-
Oh, Eric, hey,
Yeah, Tom, I don't think there'll be occupants, and if there are, it doesn't matter.
Okay,
We
is
just,
that a imposition to Nate to meet in the evening?
no, nope.
Okay. Let him come in late the next day, Eric.
do we want to try and do both, short, visits to both?
I'll try it. Of course, by then it's gonna be dark, but,
yeah, and so this property, Village Commons, is the one right next to the old public safety building. Okay, right next to the old
Right,
fire
all
station.
right, yeah. Conference center.
Yeah.
Okay, I can do earlier than 6. Fine by me.
I can do earlier.
can we do like a 5 o'clock?
Yeah.
Just to make
Yeah.
sure we
Yeah.
can maybe spend an hour at both. All
Probably do like a 5:10, 5:15. I can do a 5. I can't get out of the office. in 5.
right, let's
I
try
can
5.
I can do anytime, so let me know.
5:15.
So for
Yeah.
Leroy, let's try 5:15.
Gonna meet here or over there?
Meet right there, and then I'll see if I can get Jocelyn Place lined up at maybe 6 o'clock, so we
Yeah.
can.
Great.
Eric, do you think 45 minutes is sufficient?
Yes,
Okay,
I do.
So that's October
25th.
October 25th.
25. 5:15.
Yep. All subject to confirmation, and I'll
Yeah,
be in touch.
that's terrific. That's really exciting.
At
At Village Commons.
Village
which is,
Commons.
Right next to the old fire station.
Yeah.
police station.
I'll provide those instructions with the confirmation.
Exactly. I forget way late. Right,
That will be fun to be able to see those facilities.
yeah,
I didn't put on the agenda, but I should provide an update and accept appropriate level of criticism. The 3i Home project, due to a failure of me and my staff, we weren't able to get the public notice in time. It was a 10-day notice. And we thought it was 7. And a requirement of approving a credit enhancement agreement is holding a public hearing with sufficient notice. And the council, rather than hearing it earlier in September, chose to have a workshop first. And that really put us down to the wire, frankly, because applications were due to main housing the day following council meeting, so there was nowhere we could put it. Long story short, the council wasn't in a position, did not approve the CEA for 3i Home. Jean Marie, I'll let you speak for yourself certainly, and perhaps others on council, but I heard voices, many voices of interest and support conceptually.
Yes,
On council, and so they tabled this matter to the November 15th meeting, appreciating that it didn't have the urgency associated with making application main housing. 3i was not at the meeting, but Corey said to me several times that it's still very important to their bottom line and to the underwriting aspects of the project. So nonetheless, they'd like to have the council continue considering it.
Right.
And I should mention the request was modified. You might recall it was 60% for the remainder of the downtown TIF term, which is about 26 years. And they modified the request to 50% for 15 years.
yes.
And that was due in large part because that bet them with the same number of points, 1 point. They may want to go further on that, but there were members of council that were outwardly speculating, whether there are any costs to serve for the residents that will be there, and it's really hard to answer that definitively. At 60%, we're returning all of the taxes paid either to the developer or to 3i Home. So there's no additional tax revenue to help offset any cost to serve that may exist. So I think there's still some value in something less than 60%, at least politically with council.
Yes.
So, I expect it will be coming back again on November 15th. And I don't know that they'll have any further insight as to the main housing funding at that point. I think it's a fairly long review process.
No, and you've encapsulated it correctly. There were a couple of counselors who are like, oh, we're giving away too much money and blah, blah, blah. And part of me is glad it did get tabled because it was getting conflated with everything else that's going on right now. So I, given the way it unfolded, I'm just as happy to have it come back because I think it gives us more time to talk to different members of the council and, impress upon them the importance and how it works with Main State housing funding, because there are still counselors who don't quite get it. So, but the good news is I think it's a minority. So
I did reach out to Maine Housing when I realized we made a mistake, and I threw myself on the sword and said, this is a kind of a clerical oversight, but nonetheless, it's in process. We were in a position to have the council take the final action 10 days after the application would have been submitted. But the folks at Maine Housing, I think, correctly said, we've got to be fair and consistent. Every project, probably has a very good reason that this happened or that happened. So I respect the fact that they need to kind of be firm in that regard. He did mention that one key project that they expected was not going to be making application. I took that to mean that 3i's chances might be pretty good.
Yeah.
And the folks at 3i continue to think they've got a very strong application regardless. So I'm hopeful
Yeah.
they're able to secure the funding.
Tom, there were fewer than normal pre-applications submitted to Maine Housing.
oh, interesting.
So that's sort of a catch-22, right? Because if 3i Home still gets the points they need and gets funded without the CEA, then it's a difficult message to send, right? Because normally, in a normal year where there's a lot of pre-applications and a lot of competition, every point matters. So we'll see how this one plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really important project for the Downs project because it's the next one in line, and their development model is kind of selling lots sequentially to be able to fund the infrastructure to kind of get to the next phase. And this property that they've chosen, the lot in particular, is just a real key lot. It's kind of a linchpin lot, if you will. I don't know the particulars, but Corey Fellows from POA did say that the Downs had been it was a very favorable land deal. Again, I don't know the particulars of that. So I think the developers see the value of this project, given where it is and where they are in their project overall. But the Downs is moving into the so-called town center phase, which I think we're all interested to see how that develops and shakes out.
Thanks for that update.
Yep, I'll confirm those tours.
Great. It's time for public comment.
I don't know that we have anyone other than.
They're banging on the doors, aren't they?
No, not yet. They'll watch us after the meeting. All right. Someone want to take the last item on the agenda?
Sorry, Brian. I actually didn't see Dick until just now. I want to make sure I got everybody in there. Who's in there?
Oh, I'm here.
I've seen you twice. Yep.
Leroy,
I'm only here once, Eric.
Leroy
Dick
Yep.
Woodward.
and Dick.
Okay.
Jean Marie's here too, Eric.
Yeah.
I got
Who?
that.
Virtually.
She was a little late, but she's here.
Yep, he's here. All right, now would somebody like to take the last item on the agenda?
Move to adjourn.
Thank you,
That's
Dick. All right.
Second.